Joined now by John Vecchione from the New Civil Liberties Alliance, and John's one of their attorneys, and appreciate you being on the program here, John. Let's start with the lawsuit that involves, obviously, the state of Missouri and Attorney General Eric Schmidt. This has to do specifically with kind of what Zuckerberg was admitting to, with the federal government trying to pressure the private companies into restricting information and speech and opinion and news. Am I correct on that?
That's exactly right. At New Civil Liberties, we've joined. We have people who've been thrown off Twitter for saying true things, like Dr. Jade Bhattacharya of the Great Barrington Declaration that talked about how to deal with the pandemic when it first broke out. And so we have joined that suit, and the state of Missouri and the state of Louisiana have pressed it, and they've asked for an injunction, and in connection with that, the court has allowed them discovery, which means they could ask questions of both the social media platforms and the government. And the social media platforms we've been in negotiations with them, and they've been producing stuff and saying, we met with these government people, and the government somehow doesn't have the same list of government people. And then yesterday, the big news is that they didn't want to give us any of Dr. Fauci or either Psaki or Jean-Pierre, the spokespeople for the president, any of their contacts with the social media folks. And we weren't asking for any, what you told the president, nothing internal, nothing like that. Just what did you say to third parties? And they were resisting. And yesterday, the court ordered that they are going to have to answer those questions.
Good morning, Job. Gabe Pfeiffer here. So what's next? What happens once you do find out? I mean, because I imagine, you're just going to find a treasure trove of information about the connections between the government contacts and our social media organizations and how they've been executing kind of government orders. So what happens after that in terms of the lawsuit?
Well, so two things are happening. First of all, we found a treasure trove already. I mean, if anybody wants to see any of this stuff, all the documents that have been released so far are on our website, ncllegal.org. And I have to tell you that the vast amount of contacts the government had and the pressure they were putting on all the Facebooks and the Twitters and all the rest of this world is really beyond anyone's expectations. I think Attorney General Schmidt would tell you, and all the attorneys and even the plaintiffs, my plaintiffs, are like, I can't believe this, because it's not like, be on the lookout for this or it'd be really helpful that. It's like almost daily emails. It's weekly reports that the social media company has had to send to the government on things they didn't like. Now, some of the things the government didn't like are crazy stuff. People are putting microchips in my blood and stuff like that. But a lot of it is true things. I mean, they asked that a parody account about Dr. Fauci be taken down, a parody account. So we're not talking about, protecting the republic from even crazy stuff. Now, under the First Amendment, you can say crazy stuff. The government shouldn't even be bothering with that. But that is not this. Our clients particularly were not thrown off the Twitter or Facebook or any of the places they were thrown off of for saying anything untrue. Some people are thrown off for just saying what the side effects are that the FDA requires the pharmacies to put on their label. So it's really outrageous.
Good morning, John. This is Ken.
The next steps, you asked about the next steps. Well, the next steps are we're going to move to get this injunction that they stop doing this. And that's the next step. I mean, that's why this discovery is going on. The court wants to see if it has jurisdiction, if there is a case.
Yeah, John, good morning. I was going to ask you a question about that, but then also I thought, I was thrown off of one of the social media sites, Twitter, permanently, and then I found a way to get back on. But it wasn't for anything that was really bad or anything. It was just a point of view, basically. It's a fence that you're going to have to walk on, though, that you don't want to diminish the ability to say your piece, but at the same, censorship, I mean, it's a tough thing to do online, don't you think? How are you guys going to be walking that fence to where you're not overdoing the censorship, and when you're working with these with these companies to try and stop them from censoring other people?
Well, here's the thing. There's something called the state action doctrine, right? Usually private parties can do what they want, and it's you can like it or lump it. there's not a First Amendment right. You can't go make the New York Times say what you want. They don't have to take your letters to the editor, that sort of thing. That's the sort of freedom you're talking about. But what we're trying to do is get the government to stop doing what they're doing, which is an overwhelming pressure on all of these companies, telling them what can be on and what cannot be on. If these folks were doing it if there were no emails, if there were no phone calls, if there was no contact between the government and these huge media companies that have so much power to be a megaphone for speech, then at least from the new civil liberties perspective, we would not be, pressing this because, again, private parties are allowed to do what they want. But this is not private parties. This is, nice social media outlet you have there. It's a shame if anything happened to it from the government. That's what's going on here.
Yeah, and we're visiting with John.
So we really directed this against the government.
We're visiting with John Vecchione from the New Civil Liberties Alliance, and we're going to give out your website and social media information here in just a moment. And the last question I've got, this is Mike again, John, is this a matter of a friendly social media just taking direction from an administration they want to support or politics they wanted to support, or does there appear to be any evidence that there was some sort of leverage or implied threat or hint of regulatory crackdown? If you don't do this, then this other thing could happen, because that's likely where it would cross the line on a First Amendment case, I would think.
It would clearly cross the line there, but what there seems to be is apprehension on the part of social media. For instance, there's an email where they say, the government's interested in this virus issue. Mercifully, we had answers for them. Well, you don't say mercifully if you're not afraid of whoever you're dealing with. There's stuff like that. In other words, and then one of the government says, there's a lot of hesitation on their part from dealing with the government. I don't know where that comes from. I mean, that's typical. You don't know where that comes from? Have you lived in America? So there's statements like that where it appears that the social media companies are not doing this because they're like, let's go help the Biden administration in any way possible. Now, there may be some of that, but it does look from the emails so far that they are apprehensive about what the government will do to them. So, and what they can do to them. So we will, but just the amount of the government knocking on their door, it seems to me, is intimidating enough.
All right. New Civil Liberties Alliance. Where do we find you online, John?
NCLAlegal.org, and you can click on the case itself and look at any of the documents that have been filed.
All right, John Vecchione, I really appreciate you being on the program, especially since we've got, the Missouri Attorney General involved in this one as well. And frankly, let's be honest, an election right around the corner that is susceptible to influence as well.
Thank you very much for having me. Bye.
All right. Once again, New Civil Liberties Alliance. You can find them very, very easily.